the stress level in children is quite unbelievable. That time that children would just freely play and have no worries and go to school and just stumble into careers, that has gone. When my daughter was very young in India, there was a very good school that everybody used to go to, which her father also went to. And because her father went to that school, she just breezed in. But there were 2-year-olds taking 2-hour tuitions daily. Tuition to pass the test. 5,000 people sat for that test and 150 were picked to get into the school. So the stress starts out that early. And children, they manifest their stress differently. They manifest their stress sometimes by not eating. Oh, my child doesn't eat anything. Why? Why is this child not eating or not sleeping? Everybody is supposed to eat and sleep. If they are not eating and they're not sleeping properly, you should consider the possibility that they are under some sort of stress. It starts very early. Eating is one of those things. And of course, in later years, in adolescent years, this can become a serious problem. It can become anorexia and bulimia. It's all connected to self-esteem. Bulimia is completely a self-esteem story. I had interviewed a girl, for my book. And on the surface, she was a very successful lawyer. She was doing very well. And she'd always done well. But her parents didn't know that from the time she was 17, she was bulimic. She would keep throwing her food up. She couldn't hold anything down. Because she had to succeed at all costs. She had to meet her parents' expectations. She had to come first at the mock trials. She had to do, national level mock trials. She just had to, everything was so acidic in her body. So acidic in her body, she couldn't hold anything down. And it was only released with the practice. Of course, I was interviewing people that practice Sudarshan Kriya. So it was the Sudarshan Kriya and the meditation and the continuous thing. That suddenly she found a blockage had gone from her system. And everything became fine. Children have a lot of stress. You go to California, you're lucky you guys don't live in California. I was there for about 10 days and I was talking to the parents, especially the ones that live in slightly competitive society. Every child of an Asian parent has to come first. Now, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? They have to not only come first, they have to bring in the trophies. The parents are under tremendous pressure because his son has got this award, that one has got that award, that one got into this school, the other one. You have no idea the level of competition among those kids and the kind of pressure it puts on them. What that does to you is develops in a child a sense of feeling that he can never do it right. It's never going to happen. You stop sending your children to competitions. Unless that child voluntarily wants to go. Not doing well at that competition. Not becoming valedictorian. Not getting the Silver Knight Award. Not placing in any trophy. Not being on the soccer team. There are so many pressures. Not being picked for the drama. What does it develop in the child? that I can put in as much effort, but I'll always be a loser. I'll never make it. And he carries that over into adulthood and into the workplace. Ultimately, when you think you can never do anything, the first thing to fail is your relationships. You won't make it you won't be able to find a girlfriend, won't be able to make the marriage last, won't get on with the people in school, standing out like a sore thumb. And nothing is outside. It's all this feeling of inadequacy. I was never good enough for my parents. I was just never good enough for them. This is a terrible syndrome, especially when, every year you see these children coming first. It's always an Asian child, an Indian child coming first in the spelling bee and something else. The pressure to be up there is just unbelievable. The pressure to be successful. You have to be as successful as the person next to you. What happens if your talent lies in playing a harp or in creating beautiful clothes, and you just can't be a doctor? It's just not in your blood. But your mother was a doctor, your father was a doctor, so they send you all the way to India or to the Caribbean to just somehow pass your exam. But it is not your swadharma, it is against everything you live for. And you're living a life, you're getting into a workplace that you absolutely don't fit into. What are you doing to your children? What are we doing to them? And these messages, some of them are overt, like parents are absolutely very, very strict, checking grades, checking what's happening, checking Pinnacle every day. What is this grade? Oh, this grade slipped. Immediately, something to be done. And in India, it's even worse. The child comes home at 4, from 4 to 10, he's in tuition. Because nobody teaches anything in school. But he has to get into the 4 engineering colleges and the 5, whatever, technical colleges, whatever few colleges there are. If you don't get in, you're finished. You have no chance of a life according to them. Half the time, we want our kids to be what we couldn't be, or what we think should be done. How can I expect my child to be anything when all my life I have been a stay-at-home mom? Can I tell my child that this is what you must do, no matter what you study, you have to get married and stay at home? Or you must be a doctor. I could never study. My life was useless. But you have to finish what I couldn't do. Very often when my kids were growing up, I used to feel that they are the only ones that don't bring in the prizes. Everybody else seems to be bringing in the prizes. But I couldn't get myself to push them enough against their grain. And I think, in a way, I did the right thing. There was never any pressure for my kids to excel. The only pressure that came from within themselves. When they got into a group of kids, automatically, you flock towards kids who are just like you. Intellectually, with the same values. It happens. And then when you see that, oh, she's doing this, she's working so hard, she's working on this project, it builds up an internal sense of competition where you're competing not with the person next to you, but with yourself. And what you want for your child is to bring out the best that he or she is capable of doing. to be the best interior designer, to be the best entrepreneur, to be the best dancer. It may not lie in academics. And who is to say your future lies in any of these things? In the olden days, in our time, you started off with a company and you retired with it. It was literally womb to tomb. You just went with one company right through. But look at the times now. Who stays in the same thing for more than 5 years? We are constantly reinventing ourselves, learning a new program so we can get that job, learning another skill so we can do something else, doing our own little startup. Children have a lot of feeling of disappointment. They disappoint themselves. There is a deep desire to become a lawyer, but they don't have it in them to pass that exam. And they haven't made a plan B. The resultant depression and disillusionment in a child can be devastating. Approach a child with compassion. They make mistakes. A mistake is a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. And it isn't really necessary to assign blame. Just like we were talking about the Tamasangam. And we were saying that something was not done. It doesn't matter who didn't do it. Now what is to be done? Your child will stumble, your child will fall. And it is your job to hold her, hold him, make him stand and walk again. Again and again and again. Children have a lot of other pressures these days in school. I notice a lot of Indian children, they're not able to tell their parents about the relationships they're having. And they get involved in college with boys and girls. And then that breakup takes place. They cannot tell their parents why that breakup is happening, why they are in this deep depression. They cannot focus on their work. They cannot do anything right. I already mentioned to you that abandonment is our greatest fear. It is hardwired into our DNA because we were hunters and gatherers. So when there is a breakup, especially the first one, it is devastating for children. And they I hear so many stories. They go through this terrible period of time and they cannot come to their mother and hold them and cry and say, I don't know what to do, help me. That support has to come from the parents. When you hold your child and said it's okay, everything is going to be fine. Everything is going to change. It's going to be fine. That confidence that a mother can give to a child, a father can give to a child, a counselor can't. A counselor is clinical, yet most children are forced to go to their counselors because they need some help. They're crying out for help. When their grades are falling, when they're acting out, when you're getting calls from school saying that something happened, it's a cry for attention. There is something you're not addressing with this child. Boys don't tell their, it's like, even in the olden days, we used to get our children married, right? My dad found somebody and I married him. And I think it's pretty true for a lot of people, that somebody was presented to them and our mindset was such that we got married. We have brought up our children to take their own decisions. We've taught them that you need your space. So they have this tremendous sense of their own private space. And someone invading that becomes a huge, huge issue. They are not willing to compromise. Because we've told them, you are perfect. You don't need to make any compromises at all. And more kids are getting married later and later and are unable to make their relationships work because from a very early age we have taught them that it's okay to quit. It's fine to quit. Sorry, in the class, puri clear? Okay, no point. No, don't go for that. We don't want them to get any pain. We want to protect them from that pain. Right? Some of us are like that. We want to protect and shelter our children a lot. They have the first sign of a fight, you call up the mother and say, oh, your son was doing this to my daughter, pinched her in the garden. You need to talk to your child. You've not allowed the child to figure it out herself. We protect our children a lot. And they quit very easily. They break relationships very easily. They move on to the next and to the next. As long as it holds their interest, it's fine. The minute the interest is gone, it's fine. It's gone. So we are only focused on those things that hold our interest. That has come with all that social media and the way things are these days. That which holds your attention is that the thousands of things happening in this world, and we've had to limit ourselves to a few things. But I find that children these days are not willing to make any sacrifices, any compromises. At the first sign of trouble, they're out the back door. The sad thing is, if it's coming to you in a relationship problem and you don't want to handle it and you escape, it's going to come to you in some other form too. The problems are going to come. Problems are going to come. And as adults, we can't handle it because as children, we were taken care of. We never handled our own problems. It's a very fine line, parenting is a very fine line. The rules that apply for one child cannot apply to another. Every child is so special and so unique. You have to tap into their space at all times and understand where they're coming from a space of lots of compassion. You are not the punisher. You are not the discipliner. You hold their hand and teach them to walk. You're their protector when they're little. As they get into adolescence, you teach them the discipline. Then you are the discipliner. You teach them what the parameters are and what they need to walk through. But once they cross that stage, you have to become their friend. You have to keep those lines of communication open all the time. Otherwise, you're the one that's going to get surprised. You never knew this was happening. You're often the last person to know about this. Whatever it is that's happening in their life. So bringing up your kids, you do the best that you can. You bring to the plate what you have been taught, what is your conditioning, what is your experience. You and your husband never see eye to eye on bringing up the children. He does something, you do something. It's true. But you still do the best that you can. And the rest, just remember, their journey is also alone. You're responsible only to a certain extent. They have to figure out their own problems and find their own solutions and have their own learning in life. You are there. You are there in case they require you. And that's how you have to be. I'll leave you with a little analogy which I've spoken of before. You place a seed in the ground and you plant it. You cover it with nice healthy soil and then you water it. And one day this little sapling emerges and you nurture it, you put fertilizer, you give it a lot of sunlight and it grows and grows and grows. Then what you do as it grows into a little branch and a little tree, you take a rope and you tie yourself to it, nice and tight. So you're like this with this tree in front of you and you're trying to see where the fruit is and where the flowers are, but you can't. Till the day you untie that rope and step back. And then from a distance you can watch this beautiful blossoming tree. And when needed, you can add a little water and step back. So think of that and keep that in mind. When you have all that guilt and all those things in your heart, my child is not like this, my child is not like that. Keep that analogy in mind and get your balancing act together, because it's a very narrow, fine line. One way can go like this, one way can go like that. But ultimately, each child, each person has their own karma.